Hello everyone, welcome to my tier list for Hollow Knight bosses. I don't have anything else to say in this intro, I feel that was self-explanatory. Let's move over to the ranking! Now, as you'll notice, once I click on this, I've kind of rejiggered the tier listing, so we have NA, which is the point where I have to come clean and admit there's actually 4 bosses left in Hollow Knight that I have not fought. Some of you may say, I really hope you can't hear the guy doing DIY next door. Anyway, some of you may say, how can you make a tier list if you haven't fought all the bosses? To that I say, the only remaining bosses are just variations on existing ones. This definitely isn't me just making excuses to squeeze out of my responsibilities, but I just don't have it in me right now to fight through Pantheon of the Hallownest, and get to Pure Vessel and Absolute Radiance. Now, I'm going to be doing something a bit different. As I said, that NA is for the bosses that I've just never fought. Bad is the category for bosses which I think are just bad bosses. They're not fun, they're not challenging, they're just annoying and not fun to fight. I would think I just said the same thing twice. To be honest, I think there's actually only one boss that makes it into the bad category, and I'm going to put him, her, it there right now, and it is Umu. Umu? I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, because I despise that boss, and I hate the God Home version even more, because basically all it is dodging and waiting till your little friend turns up to make it vulnerable to then attack it. And I just really don't. I don't like bosses that where your ability to do damage is not in your hands, is out of your control, and you're basically waiting. And it's even worse because in the God Home version, it's those jellyfish, homing jellyfish, that you need to angle to attack Umu to make it vulnerable. You only need to do that twice, to be fair, in the God Home version, so you could argue over which is worse, but I don't think either of them are good. So that one goes in bad. I really I'm tempted to put Flukmarm in the bad category as well, purely because, in fact, you know what, Flukmarm, you're going into bad. Purely because the boss itself does absolutely nothing. It just sits there and it sends out the little homing bitey flies after you to fight you. So I really don't think... It's not a miserable fight like Umu is, but it's not fun or particularly engaging either, and especially if you've got nail upgrades by the time you get to it and you can one-shot the little flies it sends out, it is just not, it's a nothing fight. So I'm confident that belongs in bad. Now, we have our remaining categories, which should need no explanation. A lot of people tend to do tier lists difficulty based. It's like the hardest bosses down to the easiest. I'm doing it a little bit different, but there'll be some crossover. I'm doing it in the order of most fun, but given the nature of the kind of game that Hollow Knight is, most fun and most challenging, there's a lot of crossover there. Grousefly and Vengefly both go into the D tier because I consider them basically to be tutorial bosses. Grousmother is about teaching you to do your up slash attack, Vengefly is teaching you to pogo. Also into that, here again, I actually am thinking that maybe No Eyes belongs in the bad category as well. He doesn't do anything at all. He's a really cool design, and I really like the angle, I like his lore. All he really does is float about and disappear and reappear, and he doesn't really do anything, so it's more it's just the fight is largely centered around just dodging the RNG projectiles that fly about the screen. It's not particularly challenging, it's just tiresome. Which also reminds me, I think I'm putting Zote into NA, even though I have fought him, but he's not really a boss fight, he's a joke fight, if anything. Anyway, moving on. So, who else can go into D tier? Maybe Gorb? I think the fact that I'm drawing a complete blank on even remembering... Actually, no, I'll tell you who's definitely going in, is Massive Moss Charger. He's going into D tier because, again, he only has 2 moves, which is the charge or the leap into the air, and there really is nothing else to him. My boy, Marmu, even though I love him as a character, and again, as I have to say, like, No Eyes isn't the bad character in terms of the fight, but I really like his character. Marmu, again, is very, very lovely, but he is a one-note boss. All you need, as soon as you realise that you can bounce him with your upswing, or if you dash then instantly attack, you'll always have the exact right range. It's kind of hard to explain, but once you figure it out, it is extremely easy to no damage Marmot because he only has one thing that he does. I'm also tempted to put... I can't decide if Elder Who should go in here as well, because again, he only really has 2 attacks. He's going into C purely because he actually gave me some trouble the first time I fought him. He's got 2 attacks. He either has the random Pillar Slam or he has the sequential Pillar Slam where it works inward and all you need to do is dash through it and that's you done with that attack. But the Pillar Slam, that sometimes got me, so for that I think he's a marginally more interesting boss than these. The Oblobbles are going into D tier. It's weird because there's nothing to them. They only really have 2 attacks. I don't even know if they've got... Do they even have 2 attacks? Do they have a slam, or is it just shooting out they just shoot out the orange blobs to damage you? I find them really, really annoying to fight because the blobs seem to be completely RNG. No matter how many times I've fought, I've never been able to find a consistent pattern with how to avoid taking damage, so I always take a shit ton of damage when I fight them, even though they're a really easy boss, because all you need to do is either get underneath them and leather them with Abyss Shriek over and over and over again, or when they'll occasionally come down to ground level, you can just lay into them with a nail, and they really have no defense, so they're a very easy boss to fight, but they're also quite annoying. I think I'm putting Broken Vessel and the Lost Kin Dream variation into C. They're similar to Elder Who, where in that they only have really 2 attacks. Lost Kin is slightly more tricky because he summons a lot more of the ads, the little floaty jelly ghosts, which are the only really challenging part of that fight because you're constantly trying to dodge around them while you're putting hits in him. The Broken Vessel and the Lost Kin themselves can do nothing basically to hurt you as long as you pay attention. It's not an unfun fight, but it's not particularly stimulating. I'm having trouble with Gorb because I really can't remember what Gorb actually does. So let me just actually see what Gorb does. Yeah, he fires... Oh yeah, that's it. He's the spear one. Right, yep, In that case, he is also going into C tier. So I'm kind of tempted to put Zero? This dude. I think he belongs in C tier as well. Both of them are pretty much the exact same boss, except Gorb's spears that he shoots out, he has a radial... A circle of spears that he summons and shoots out in 2 different forms. So it's extremely straightforward. Once you figure out what to do, it's just a case of dodge hit, dodge hit, dodge hit, and the exact same as Zero, or Quiero, if you're wanting a bit of a Spanish flair. Except the only difference with him is he has his swords floating at his side at all times, and he shoots them out 1 or 2 at a time, and then brings them back. So basically, you just treat him like a sort of bullet hell game where you lead the shots and then you're always left open to get attacks in. The Collector's going into D as well because he is one of the only fights that I can consistently no damage. He himself only has 1 attack, which is a slash attack, and he hardly ever does it. I'm not entirely sure what actually prompts him to do it. It seems to be completely random, and all he really does is spawn ads, but by the time you've actually got to fighting him, you'll one-shot anything he can summon. So it just becomes a case of staying on top of the jars he drops down, and the only way you're ever really going to take damage in the Collector fight is if he lands on top of you. I'm putting Crystal Guardian, that is his name, isn't it? And Enraged, yes, Enraged Guardian, and... yeah, I was right, Crystal Guardian. Once again, both variations of this boss I'm putting into C tier, only because on my first playthrough, or the first times I played, I had a weird amount of trouble with beating him, but again, once you sort of clue into the fact that he only has 2 attacks, and they are extremely telegraphed and extremely easy to dodge, there's really nothing you can do. Like the Enraged version, from what I recall, he's just more aggressive. They're really, as long as you pay attention to what he's doing at any given time and you're careful with choosing when to attack him, again, it's a really easy boss to no damage. I'm putting Nosk into bad. I hate the Nosk fight. I'd say it's the only boss. There's one other boss fight in the game that I really, really hate. Nosk, I despise purely because of one thing. and that's the attack where he jumps onto the ceiling and starts spitting down globules of that orange goo everywhere. I never get a sense of like how to lead where he would drop the globules and sort of like back him into a corner so he would land somewhere that was advantageous to me. It always just felt completely like, I know he sort of drops where you're going so you can but the problem is because the things he drops stay on the ground, it's very, very easy to box yourself in. So I don't like the arena. The fact that there's a little step up makes it really easy to get caught and cornered, and I just really strongly dislike the boss. But that does bring us to Broody Molek, who I used to hate for a similar reason to Nosk, because Broody Molek has one attack where Brooding makes me think it's a she. She has one attack where she shoots tons of the orange blobs up into the air, and I always thought it was impossible to dodge that. I always thought it was, if you're on the wrong side when she fires that attack, you're going to take damage. It wasn't until, just as a fluke, I realised that there is a window of time after she shoots it, but before it lands, where if you jump up, you can glide over, you can do the dash, go over the top of it and land on the other side, and then get a few hits in. Once you know that, there is very, very little in the Broody Molek that fight that can actually hurt you. Moving on, I once again have to go and remind myself what it is exactly that Markoth does. This is so straight. Like, I cannot even picture fighting him, but it just sounds a lot like Zero, but with a shield instead. So I think I'm putting him in C. I'm going by on the basis that the fact that I can't even remember him suggests he's not much of a fight. Now, here's the issue. I'm trying to, once again, similar to Nosk, I'm trying to decide, but for different reasons, where God Tamer belongs. As long as you understand that when Big Worm Guy does his ball roll attack and bounces off the ball, he'll always land, the trajectory of the ball, it'll land wherever you are. So as long as you wait till he rolls up the ball and bounces and then move it, you will never ever get hit. He's got an annoying, again, you might notice a theme through this. It's that all the enemies that have that spit the orange shite at you are the ones that I struggle the most with. I don't know why, it's just something about it freaks me out. I think because it's RNG, so I can't sort of get used to the patterns of it. But God Tamer, they're definitely not bad tier, unlike Nos, because it is... I don't like to use the word unfair because I think that sounds like, you know, scrub quotes. Whereas God Tamer is extremely predictable and manageable. It's just difficult. It can just be kind of tricky. So I guess I'd rank them D because they're similar to the Oblobles, where they're not a difficult boss, but it's easy to get trapped in a cycle if you're not paying attention. And for some reason... Oh, there he is. Yes, right. So this is the False Knight. I want to put him as B, even though False Knight's comparative, given how early he's the first real boss that you fight in the game. But I really, really like his design because it's very simple, but it is very overwhelming that early in the game. Once you learn to sort of fight at these patterns, and you learn that the trick to the False Knight is being aggressive, because the main mistake that's going to fuck you in the False Knight fight is try to run away when he jumps, whereas every single time he leaps, you should be going under him. You should always be going towards him. The only other time it is after he gets floored and then his cute wee face comes out and you let that, then he'll always jump in at the centre and do his little tantrum. But other than that, it's always to your advantage to go straight at him, and once you figure that out, it is a really, really fun fight where it's all just about trading blows. I'd say it belongs in B tier above C because, as I said, with C, all the C tier are basically one-trick ponies. They only really have one thing that they can do, and once you know what that one thing is, they're extremely easy to beat, whereas False Knight has range, he has different attacks, and there is more going on. He's just quite easy because he's so early in the game. I would likewise put Hornet 1 in B tier. Hornet is a very fun fight. Again, it's largely about dodging, and once you get that in your head and learn when it's safe to attack and when you should really be making distance from her, it just becomes a really fun sword battle, and it's very equally matched, which is something I really enjoy. I think Mantis Lords might have to be our first A. I think Mantis Lords might be the first boss in Hollow Knight that is really lets you know what the game is all about. there really isn't a moment, except after you defeat the first one before the two start fighting you. There isn't really any time to heal, and I think that's the crucial difference between a lot of these other bosses, is Mantis Lord is relentless, that fight, and especially once the two come out, you do not stop moving, or you are almost certainly going to die. It becomes a real game of dodge, always learn when to dodge, when to attack, and once you get that down with Mantis Lords, it's just such a fun fight. The only attack that I really hate from the Mantis Lords is when they throw out their spears and they sort of boomerang, they go out and then in, or they come down and out, because something about that just, I don't know, the mind games always phase me, and I usually end up taking a hit to it. Soulmaster, I think, similar to False Knight, belongs in B. No, do you know what? I think Soulmaster does belong in A, because unlike False Knight is patterns, False Knight is teaching you, bosses have patterns, learn the patterns and you're not going to have a lot of struggle. Soulmaster is similar, Soulmaster is very, very pattern based, but so much more, like there is a lot more going on, you're constantly having to stay on your feet and think about what's going to happen next, and I think I'm going to put Soul Tyrant, much like Lost Kin, Broken Vessel, much like Crystal Guardian, Rage Guardian. Soul Tyrant is almost identical to Soulmaster. It's just a lot more aggressive, a lot faster. I do find Soulmaster mildly annoying, just because for some reason I just find it the hardest thing about Soul Tyrant, sorry, I'm getting them mixed up now. The hardest thing about Soul Tyrant is finding the window to attack. The most consistent one I found was when he goes across the screen and he's got the orbs spinning round him. That is you get an up attack in. If you're very careful, you can probably get an Abyssal Shriek in on him. But other than that, like when he appears and shoots the balls, that's a good tip, but it really depends where he appears. The slams, the fake out on the slam is a massive dick move, but very fun. And the second phase, the final phase, the fake out, is fun in both of them. Kind of tricky, especially if you've made it to the second that phase of Soul Tyrant and you're hanging on a sliver of health. Because while we're on the topic, I also want to bring in Failed Champion. Now, the reason why, unlike all of these others, I'm putting Failed Champion in A tier, whereas his original False Knight version is in B tier, is because unlike Soulmaster, Soul Tyrant, unlike the Lost Kin, Broken Vessel, unlike these ones, I think Failed Champion, the gulf between Failed Champion and False Knight is massive. I don't know what it is, but Failed Champion really separates the men from the boys, and I found him, again, he's a very, very, very irritating boss the first time you come across him, but it is really, really fun to fight him and to slowly learn the patterns and again, once you learn to be more aggressive and to not constantly be on the back foot, because that's how you end up taking damage, turning your back and running away and trying to retreat, you need to be aggressive, then it becomes an extremely fun fight of dodging, attacking, give, take, and just being very, very careful. So it's characteristic of this game, especially the more times I do runs of it, the more I play it, I find that the bosses that I used to hate are now my favourite and I now really love, because I sort of appreciate better the design and how it's all pattern based, and once you learn that, they're so much more fun to fight. I think... Wait, what's B Knight's actual name? Oh, Hive Knight, sorry. Yes, Hive Knight, he's going in B tier. I didn't even do that on purpose. Oh, I'm a dick. Anyway, I hated Hive Knight. He was the boss more than any other that I was dreading fighting again, because... well, the main reason that I hate fighting him is because if you die to him, the bench is really, really far away from his actual fight, and the hive is an annoying area to go through. But as long as you make sure that by the time you get there, you have the Dream Nail upgrade that lets you put fast travel points, teleport points, wherever you want, you can negate all of that and just instantly teleport back to the entrance to the arena. That didn't matter though in my Twitch run, because I beat him on my first try, because it turns out, again, that once you learn the patterns, and once you know that he only really, I think, has 2 attacks. He's got a dash forward, a teleport, and then dash forward, a stinger. Huh. Fucking puns, man. So he's got a stinger attack. He has the attack where he sends out, it's similar to, kind of getting ahead of myself here, Hornet 2, where he puts out little balls that then explode and shoot out stingers as well. And I want to say he's got a downward slash, but I do know, well in that case he has 4 attacks, because he has the other attack where he summons bees that fly down towards you, and that I would say is his most irritating attack, because that should be the point you'd think where you get heals off, but you can't because bees are constantly coming towards you. So it becomes a case of dodge away from the bees, come back in, get as many hits in as you can. If you feel like it, you can probably brute force it at the time he puts that attack on, depending what kind of health you've got. But again, similar to Crystal Guardian, I had memories of really hating the fight, but when I came into it and realised, oh, he's actually only got a handful of attacks. So once you learn when it's safe to attack and you choose your moments, he's actually a very straightforward boss. I've just realised Soul Warrior is still sitting on the bench, and he's gone into D tier because, again, similar to Gru's-Mother and Vengefly, I'd say that Soul Warrior is really just a tutorial boss for the Soulmaster. Now, as we get into remotely challenge, again, we have a dilemma, because Traitor Lord... See, here's the thing, I hate Traitor Lord in the same way that I hate Nosk, but unlike Nosk, I don't think Traitor Lord is a badly designed boss. He's kind of similar to False Knight or Failed Champion, where you need to learn to dodge into him and towards him, rather than if you try and go in the back foot, he has incredible range and he will almost always hit you. So if you actually learn, by that point you should have the Shade Cloak and be able to dash through enemies. So you need to, once you learn, again, and I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but it really does, it is true, and this is why after my fourth playthrough of Hollow Knight, I really appreciate the incredible job that Team Cherry did in making very simple, you know, what's the phrase, easy to learn, hard to master boss fights. Mechanically, Hollow Knight is one of the best games I've ever played, and I really appreciate that the more times I play it. But anyway, Traitor Lord, as I was saying, I don't know, this is the one thing I really don't understand. I think this was a bizarre design decision. There's very few design decisions in Hollow Knight that I think are bad, but this is one of them, and it's not the Traitor Lord's arena, it's the fact that he's at the end of a spiky platforming challenge, and I have no idea, I don't know why they thought, because he's also the first boss in the game, I think, who all of his attacks hit for 2. He's also a boss where you have to fight a couple of the regular Mantis enemies before you actually get to fight him. The boss himself, I don't actually have a problem with. The boss himself is quite fun to fight, but it's all the rigmarole and the run back. Like, that's the thing that always annoys me. I don't mind having to fight the same boss 20 times in a row, and we'll definitely come back to that point. What I hate is, don't waste my time by making me run an arbitrary length, do a stupid wee platform challenge, then fight a couple of grunts. This is a fight that can last 30 seconds at most before everything goes tits up, but the run back is like 2.5 minutes, and that is what really annoys me. Having said all that, I think the boss himself is good fun, so I think he belongs in B tier. I don't have a lot to say about Hornet 2, or Sentinel Hornet, I think is the name. Hornet 2 was another one of the ones that I was really dreading doing on stream, but I think by the skin of my teeth, it must be said, I beat her on my first try. I think she only gets one new attack, which is summoning similar to Hive Knight, although they're not as much of a problem. She summons little spike balls onto the screen, but you can hit them and destroy them. So as long as you stay on top of things, as long as you focus on keeping the screen clear and on what she's doing at all times, she has a lot of openings that you can really punish. It's a very fast-paced fight. It's everything that I love about Hollow Knight, but it's still... compared to, see, now I'm do you know what, Soulmaster's coming back down to B, now that the more that I think about it, because given my criteria for why I love Sentinel Hornet Sentinel, I think I have to say the same about Soulmaster. Soulmaster's a lot of fun, it's quite fast, but it keeps you on your toes, but it's not A tier. Soul Tyrant, I would say, is, and I think the reason that I bumped Failed Champion up, I think is the same reason that Soul Tyrant belongs in A tier. Right, I need to get this guy out of the way. Gollin is essentially the death fight, as in the Castlevania from Death, but the Hollow Knight version. He just throws his scythe around, and in second phase he summons little scythes. See, this is tricky, because he's not a bad fight, he's a reasonably fun, but he's just... I think I want to put him in D tier, unlike the C tier who all have something interesting about them. Gallon doesn't really do anything except float around, and his scythe does all the work, and then his little scythe, and it's really just RNG. Complete RNG. Like, from what I can tell, there's no real rhyme or reason to where the little scythe goes. It's really just dodge attack, dodge attack. It's not a very dynamic fight, so I think he belongs in the D tier. Suppose we need to discuss the elephant in the room at some point. Is Zote the Mighty's name? He's a dream boss. Oh, sorry, he's Grey Prince Zote. I think he belongs in bad. I don't know really, because he has a fight. Because he has a real fight, but he's not. I get. Do you know what? I think I'll put him in C tier. Purely because there's more dimensions to his fight than there is to the D tier bosses, but he's not a fun fight. I don't know that I could call him challenging, because it's more just that he's kind of bullshit and he does a lot of irritating things. Which actually, speaking of, we have one final elephant in the room, which is the Watcher Knight, who I also think I'm going to need to put in C tier. Here I'm struggling, because they don't really have many attacks. In fact, I think they only have 2 attacks, a forward or a bouncy. Forgive me if I got that wrong. The challenge of the Watcher Knight is that you need to fight like 10 of them in one go. Well, not in one go, one after the other. They resurrect more and more over time. So no individual one of them is challenging, but it's just so much shit getting thrown at the wall. You need to fight them more and more and more. There is actually, it's a lot like Mighty Prince Zote. It's not an easy fight, but it's not challenging for the right reasons. Dung Defender, my boy, my favourite. Instinctively, I think I want to put him in C tier. The thing about Dung Defender, and again, this is a special point where I need to reiterate how this isn't a judgment of the characters themselves, because I love Dung Defender. He's one of my favourite characters in the game. I mean, he's no cloth, but he's pretty good. Once you know what he does, and once you know what you can do, like when he's underground, you can use Desolate Dive and knock him up and get a few hits in. Most of his attacks are very predictable to dodge. There's really not a lot he can do to hurt you. I'm tempted to put White Defender into B. Actually, do you know what? He can go into B because he does have a couple of tricks up his sleeve that make him above average. From what I can recall, he can like throw up shockwaves and things. There's different things he can do. So he's at least interesting enough, I think, to make it into B. This is now more about who do I want to address first. See, from here on out, I'd say all of these are A or... Actually, do you know what? Hollow Knight is going into B. And I realise this is a bit rich since Pure Vessel. I have a feeling Pure Vessel would probably be an A or S. Broken Vessel is... In fact, no, definitely. Sorry, Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight definitely belongs in B tier because he is basically identical to Hornet in the sense of why I love Hornet, and that it's just a good old-fashioned sword fight. The only attack I really don't like is when he floats up into the air and starts shooting out his goo, because again, RNG, it can sort of go anywhere. It's kind of annoying to dodge, but if you fight him properly, it's a very fun, it's interesting fight. But the problem is, by that point in the game, you are so overpowered, it's pretty easy to just brute force him. It's very hard to actually die to Hollow Knight, and no matter how you do, you automatically get all your health back before you go into fighting the Radians, who I'm dithering on putting between A or B. See, here's the problem. I'd say Phase 1 of Radiance is A. For the time being, let me put it in A while I compose my thoughts. Phase 1 of Radiance is definitely A tier, because it's almost like a final exam. It's a culmination of everything up to that point that you've learned from all the other bosses, everything that could possibly happen. The thing that I really hate is the fact that every time you died, and this is in contrast to every other boss like this in the game, because technically, spoilers, the Radiance is a dream boss, and in every other dream fight in the game, when you lose it, you just wake up outside the body of whoever's dream you were fighting. With the Radiance, if you die to the Radiance, you go back to the bench, you need to come back and do the Hollow Knight fight again. As I've already explained, the Hollow Knight fight is extremely easy. It's just a case of brute force at that point. You get all your health back at the end, so the only thing you need to make sure is to conserve Spirit, because Spirit is, or Soul, rather I should say, sorry, because Soul is extremely useful, because Abyssal Shriek fucks this dickhead up. The other thing that I don't like about the Radiance, especially in the Phase 1 fight, Phase 2 is kinda bad as well, but on rare occasions, it is possible to end up in a no-win situation. That is, like when it'll summon the massive, like there's a big wall laser that just goes across the screen, and you have no choice. The only way to dodge that is to Shade Cloak through it. But there will be times when you'll have to Shade Cloak through the attack, and then you'll be directly in the path of another attack, and you won't have anything to dodge it with. You won't have, your Shade Cloak won't have time to recharge, so you basically just need to eat a hit. And I find that kind of unfair, but you could also argue at the same time that if you're really focused and really paying attention, you can time when you do your Shade Cloak dash to then avoid whatever's going to be on the other side of it. That's why I don't know, does it belong in A? I guess when we've got a tier above it, it's still an A tier fight. It's a very, very, I mean, as final boss fights go, they throw fucking everything at you. So I guess in that regard, it really fills its remit. There are just those, it's all external things around it that annoy at the fact that, and then there's the bit at the very end where once you're in the final stage, it's just climb up the pillars, dodge the lasers, and then do your final attack. And I don't really like the fact that, even though, again, like the thing about the lasers at the very end is they're coming down, once you figure out that wherever the laser fires once, it'll fire the other side the next time, it is very, very easy to do that section without ever taking damage, so it doesn't really matter if you do get to that stage with only one mask left. You can get through it as long as you pay attention and you're calm, but usually by the time you've done the first two phases of Radiance, you're not going to be calm. But again, that's not a fault of design. If anything, it's intentional design to just try and trip you up at the final hurdle. So all in all, no, I'd say Radiance belongs in A tier. We are now at the final 5. Right off the bat, I can tell you, as soon as Paintmaster Shio is going straight into A tier, without a doubt. I love that fight. What I really love about him is he's got color-coded attacks, and you'll very quickly figure out what ones are punishable and what ones are just stay away from this. And I really like the color coding, because you know what attacks come and you know what to do. So it just becomes, again, sort of like Hornet, like Hollow Knight. It's just a good old-fashioned sword fight. Then you have the brothers, Oro and Mato. I think, actually no, do you know what? If I put Mantis Lords in A tier, then Oro and Mato have to be in A tier, because they're basically another variation on the Mantis Lords. And it's just a really, really fun fight. I would say Shio's a better fight, even though it's just him himself. But Oro and Mato, again, everything that's great about Hornet and Hollow Knight, everything that's great about the Mantis Lords is even better about Oro and Mato. I only just beat Sly for the first time today, and Sly is the one nail master that gave me serious trouble. But once again, shout out to Relyea for his fantastic guides, which is what taught me how to beat him. In fact, I think Sly belongs in the B tier, because he's a fun wee fight, but once you actually realise these limitations, there's really nothing he can do. The biggest danger from fighting Sly is his range. That's what I was taking hits on, like looking back in the footage. But his actual attacks, like the downward slash, just stay away from him. He will never ever touch you with it. The spinning slash, the just pogo on him, he will never ever touch you with it again unless you're bad with your pogo timing. The great slash, once again, like the great slash is the one that's most likely to catch you out, but again, you have a window where you see him charge up, jump up in the air, again, you will never ever get hit by it, and it's a good opportunity to punish him. The best time to attack is the 1-2 up in the air, spin, land. You can get 2 hits in there if you get quick slash equipped. The trickiest part to fighting Sly is baiting out that 1-2 spin slash, because that's the best time to attack. And again, to say, because his range is longer, it's deceptively long, it's hard to get in, bait that attack, and then get out before he hits you. The second phase only has one attack. He'll zip about the air, and then he'll do a big spin, and then he's briefly vulnerable. I think that's the only time he's vulnerable, is after the spin's finished. But the window to hit him is so slim that, again, ranges the enemy, because you want to dash out the way of the spin attack and then dash back in to get a hit before he starts moving again. So what I found was more helpful, eventually, it was charge and do dash slash, or just charge slash. It means when you do manage to get hits in, you're hitting them much harder, and and it just makes that phase go through quicker. Grim, I can tell you without doubt, goes in A tier. The first time I played the game, Grim drove me insane, and I think I nearly rage quit. I hated it so much because he is so, like, for everything else I might say about the Radians, about Failed Champion, about anything I've said, Dishka, anything I've said, Grim is the point where they just, Grim is old school. Grim is like an 8-bit era boss, where even down to the fact that he uses some of Dracula's attacks from Castlevania. What I love about him, again, is what I love. All the positive things I've said about all the bosses in this game is what I love most about Grim, is that once you learn what all of his attacks are, what their limitations are, and how to maneuver around them, like for example, his uppercut attack, you always want to dash into, you want to dash towards that attack, and then you'll be safe, and then just maneuver around, try not to get hit by the fireballs that come down. The pillar attack, if you can get close to him when he sends up the spiked columns, you can do serious damage to him. The ball attack, where he shoots out all the little balls, that's very bit. It's just jump, jump. Just make sure you're not overcompensating your jumps. Don't feint and end up doing a double jump when you don't need to. It's very, you can just jump, 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 and you'll always get through that without damage. His dash down, dash across. You can pogo him there. I'm pretty sure you can pogo him there if your timing's good, but generally speaking, I found that just jump over him. Just don't even risk it. Oh, and then his fireball attack. I think he sends out 2 waves of fireballs. So you jump, double jump at the second fireball, and then that should land you right in front of him to get in a couple of hits before he disappears. More than any of the other bosses this game, I'd say Grim is perfect. Everything about him is it's fair, but it's really difficult, but it's always fair. There is never a moment where you're like, oh well, that's bullshit, there was nothing I could have done there. Everything about it is just such a perfect fight. And that, of course, leads us into Nightmare King Grim, who it would appear is the only S tier fight. I'm not really sure about this. The more I think about it, I get the feeling that had I fought Sisters of Battle is their name, I feel like they'd probably be S tier as well, because it's all, you fight all 3 at once, because that's why Nightmare King Grim is S tier, because everything that I just said about Grim is doubly true about Nightmare King. And I think when I fought him on stream, I fought and beat him on stream for the first time ever, and I think it was about 30 minutes of constant tries and retries and failure and getting my arse handed to me over and over and over again. The difference is when you get beat by Nightmare King Grim, because it's a dream fight, you immediately wake up right back at the start of that fight and you can go right back into it. There's very little downtime. If you're going to have bosses that are going to absolutely ram your shit in and are going to stomp you over and over and over again, the least you can do is make it so I can just, I don't want to fanny about with run backs. I don't want to have to sit through loading screens and all this, but I just want to fight them again. I don't care if I need to fight them 100 times in a row, that's fine, because every time I fight them, I'm learning, I'm getting better, and that's what it was like at Nightmare King. Like, I got annoyed at certain points, but it was always at myself, and as I got better at recognising his moves, and like the number one thing he does, that's also the thing that I love about Nightmare King versus just Troopmaster Grim, is the little ways that they tweak the fight. This is sort of why I like Failed Champion and Soul Tyrant, but with Nightmare King Grim it's an entire other level, and they take all the attacks of the original, but they tweak them to fuck with your muscle memory. For example, he's got his fireball attack, and the first one is just jump over them, and you will always have the height, and you will land perfectly to hit them. But in the second one, in the Nightmare King version, the fireballs, it'll be one at the top, one at the bottom, and you actually need to jump through the middle. Because your muscle memory's conditioned, you're always going to try and jump over them, and you won't have the clearance, and you'll take a hit from the top one. You'll probably take a hit from, that's the other, there's 3 this time, because it's 2, 1, 2, middle, I think 1, 2. So instead, it becomes a game of jump over the first one, walk on the second one, shade cloak through the third one, then get your hits in. And it's just about relearning, retraining your muscle memory, which was actually funny, because then once I went into Godhome and I fought normal Grim again, I died to him because all my muscle memory was trained for the Nightmare version. So that's what I really like, and that's why I think Nightmare King, at this point, who knows, maybe someday in the future, if I can ever summon the strength to go through Pantheon of Hallownest and I can get to these boys, maybe we'll have some other S tier contenders. For the time being, this is my current tier list. I would love, because I cannot stress enough how much I love this game. Every time I come back and play it again, I get more and more appreciation. It blows my mind that Team Cherry, who are a team of like, I can't remember the credits, but it's like at most a dozen people made this game, and they've managed to make a game with more depth than AAA studios who funnel millions into these games and they come out shite. And yet, not only was Hollow Knight was great to begin with, but they've added more and more, and it just gets better and better. I cannot fucking wait for Silksong. I think it's going to be amazing. But I hope you found this interesting to listen to. I would be very curious to hear what you think of my rankings in the comments, and if you think there's someone else that belongs in the S tier. If you think I'm wrong for bad design bosses, Dung Defenders, come at me. But all in all, please, if you enjoyed this, like, rate, comment, subscribe. Like and rate are the same thing. I'd like to say I know I'm going to do another video like this in the future, but the only other thing I can think to do it for is Neo, so if that's something that would be interesting, let me know. But until then, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a lovely day. In fact, this is a threat. Goodbye!